Hello, welcome to my channel. My name is Tashad, and this is Tashad TV, where we discuss fashion, art, and culture in analytical ways. And we have in depth conversation respecting each other's perspectives. So, if you're interested in that, please subscribe to this channel. I upload videos every week, and also leave comment requests of subjects you would like me to discuss. In this week's video, we're going to be talking about cultural appropriation as it pertains to fashion. I urge you to, first of all, have an open ear when I'm discussing these things, and also watch fully to the end of the video so that you can get a well-rounded understanding of what I'm trying to say. There's most likely not one sentence I can say to just sum up my thoughts completely, hence why I'm making this whole video. So please do not diminish my opinions into one sentence when responding to them in the comment section. Thank you. So for some background, I make TikTok videos and I discuss the fashion evolution of many fashion icons, music artists, people in the public eye that have interesting specific styles or have style journeys that people follow. This past week, I did the style evolution 2 parts to Miley Cyrus, and I got a couple comments regarding cultural appropriation. I will insert what I said about her era of cultural appropriation right here. 2014. Fashion-wise, this was a disappointing era. I don't want to talk too much about right and wrong because honestly, when it comes to art, morality is not that interesting to me personally. I do believe it's worth noting that this was strategically about making people uncomfortable. And historically, that same motive, when applied to fashion, has created some incredible moments. But in Miley's case, it mostly just made people cringe. I'm a long-winded person. I know it doesn't seem that way on TikTok because I make videos ranging from 1 minute to 3 minutes about fashion because that's what the TikTok platform allows. But given the space, which is YouTube, I do have a lot to say. Therefore, I'm gonna have all my thoughts out there, or what I feel is all of the thoughts relevant to the conversation of the week. Okay, because I'm a Black woman in the year 2022, I know there's an expectation about things surrounding cultural and racial sensitivity where people expect me to just go off and just condemn. And no matter what I'm saying, I'm in the right. And that's the way people treat it. Now, I do think there are certain experiences I have had that do make me have more knowledge than others on particular issues, but that doesn't necessarily mean how I perceive them or my beliefs around them are completely valid and invalidate anyone else's. Just putting that out there. And I'm not gonna be on here being contrary for the sake of being contrary, but I would like to have a real discussion with people who are actually interested in giving their opinions and giving their thoughts in a respectful manner. Now we can actually get into my thoughts. Okay, so when I'm discussing cultural appropriation, I'm talking about the misuse and lack of knowledge and reverence for symbols, artifacts, rituals, clothing, etc., of a culture that the person doing the action does not belong to. A lot of people kind of use that term as not necessarily the misuse or someone not knowing what it's for, but if somebody uses or represents any of those culturally significant things and they're not part of that culture, that's usually what people are referring to as cultural appropriation because they are then appropriating that for themselves. And I think that's actually where this conversation should start and where it gets interesting. Because of the internet specifically and how it's set up, everybody can have a say in pretty much anything. Like any social media platform, you are allowed to leave your comment on anything. And then it's kind of like we treat that as like some sort of public judgment, and then that's where like a verdict is given of, yeah, this is cultural appropriation because this amount of people agree and these particular people are upset, and so that's the end all be all. um I'm not here to say whether or not that's right or wrong. If we take a step back, maybe we should examine that and just like think about it a little bit more and think about whether or not like you particularly think of something as cultural appropriation because you've looked at that specific instance and thought about it, or if you've seen other reactions to it and then have slapped on your definitive idea. This is actually kind of an old example now. This is the Marc Jacobs New York Fashion Week Spring Summer 2016 show, in which Marc Jacobs featured white girls in dreadlocks. I think it's a very interesting time that this got a lot of flack for, because I don't think it's definitely not the first time dreadlocks have been featured on a fashion runway, but because it was in 2016, which was probably the most politically charged year for the US, it was like especially seen as culturally insensitive. But my first thoughts when looking at these looks was, what is Marc Jacobs going for? If you're someone that doesn't follow fashion and doesn't watch runway shows regularly, the sheer strangeness and like cringeness of the imagery is probably enough for you to think this is wrong. But I do want to say that like it's pretty common for the fashion industry and for fashion shows in particular to have like weird looks. I did do more research on the show itself, and Marc Jacobs said that he was going for cyberpunk, and I didn't even know what that was, but I looked that up as well. Cyberpunk is depicting a dystopian future that is technologically overrun. So people's appearances take on this grungy, lawless society vibe. Okay, so the first problem that people saw with this depiction, which I think is pretty interesting to point out, that it's not the dreadlocks itself, but it's the fact that they were on white models, because a lot of people were saying, well, why didn't you cast more black models or just non-white models if you were going to use these culturally specific hairstyles? Of course, Marc Jacobs, he's a huge fashion designer. He's very secure in the fashion industry. Of course, he could have, like, if he really wanted to, asked for more black models. Part of that responsibility is more on the casting directors, and I'm not saying the casting directors directly for the show, but the casting directors in the fashion industry right now and the way they're operating it. There was a great talk by James Scully. It's called How Fashion Became About Power and Lost Its Ability to Dream, and it's here on YouTube. You can watch it for free, and he basically explains how in the late 90s to early 2000s, within like the modeling industry and who they cast to do runway shows and for campaigns and such, it became a lot more white and a lot more prepubescent. It started decades ago, and it's something that the fashion industry still has not recovered from. I don't know about you guys, but I'm 24, so I don't have memories of the fashion industry in the 90s or even really the early 2000s, because when I started getting into fashion and looking up runway shows and stuff, this was probably like early 2010s, you know? So for us who are like super young and super new to it, we can perceive that the fashion industry has always been this white and has always had these requirements for their models. You're going to think about what you see now as like what has always been, when really that wasn't the case. That's something to look into. I'll link that talk in the description bar in case you want to watch it. Oh, but another problem that people pointed out because of this was, I actually think was getting lost on deaf ears, and even Marc Jacobs himself, I think, didn't really understand this part of it, is what people were really calling out with the wider world we live in. So basically, they were saying how the fashion industry is seen as this glamorous and continuously powerful profiting machine, and it's doing it on the backs of culture, when people in real life who are in those cultures and are expressing them are being forced to tone them down, basically whitewash themselves for the sake of getting jobs, getting educations, etc. The irony in that can be seen as like a slap in the face to people of marginalized cultures who cannot express them, but then see people like Marc Jacobs making money off of it in the fashion industry, you know? And, you know, it's really, I think that's such a tricky thing to discuss, because it's like Marc Jacobs isn't the one that sets the rules and regulations for any like job or educational space, right? It's a catch-22, because fashion is and will always be about culture. So it's easy for that industry to be targeted about issues that are enforced more by economic and political systems, you know, because fashion is pretty much like a visual report of what is happening in the world, but it's a very curated report, right? So it's going to be like the cool, the interesting, the visually stimulating parts of it, but it's not going to be the hard, the detrimental, the dangerous parts of that reality. Like I said in the video, I'm against fashion that doesn't do what fashion is supposed to do. And not the idea that possibly my identity is where the fashion inspiration comes from. I'm gonna judge it artistically, okay? I'm gonna judge it. Did you do something different with the inspiration? Does it look good? Is it pushing people's like thoughts? Like, are you really creating something new out of old things? Because I believe art exists because of sharing ideas and thoughts and beliefs and experiences, aka culture. So when we're judging artistic expression, it's kind of boring to me to take someone's identity and then place limits on what we want to see from them. But it is, on the other hand, interesting to consider someone's identity and how their perspective informs their art. You know, I think that's even why what I'm doing now, fashion analysis, is even a thing. Because you're thinking about, okay, so why did this come to be, and why did they make these choices? And that makes it a lot more interesting, because you don't know those things. Those are things you have to inspect, things you have to consider, things, and it makes you look at the visuals in a different way. I don't know. I'm not hugely versed on politics, so I don't want to talk too much about it, but I do not think all art has political agenda. I do think if you want to, you can see politics in anything. You can see the ways in which politics are now set up, reflected in the way some people do things, but not always. We don't always know that what we're debating as cultural appropriation even should be considered cultural appropriation. Maybe we should have different ways in which we talk about these things. But, you know, like me and thousands of people that are using the term cultural appropriation, we are sensationalizing it. Because if I didn't name this video what I named it, most people wouldn't have clicked on it. You know, if I titled this video "Cultural Appropriation Isn't Real," I would have had 1,000 comments debating me before I even got one person to fully watch the video, you know? So anyway, those are my thoughts. I don't think they should be the final say in this conversation, because I do not have a monopoly on culture and cannot put my thoughts above other people's feelings and experiences. But for now, I've said what I wanted to say, so let me know what you guys think, and we can keep the conversation going in the comments. And definitely suggest more topics, more fashion topics or art, culture topics for me to talk about, because yeah, I'm trying to upload every single week and really stimulate conversation. Bye.